You just said you're expecting the Roaring '20s, and there seems to be a debate about what the Roaring '20s we're talking about here. Some people think we're talking about the Roaring '20s from now, maybe literally till 2029, 2030. Others think it could be till 2022 or maybe 23, that once some of the stimulus money rolls off, if interest rates continue to go higher, that we might go back to a slower growth phase. Where do you land on that?
Well, I think the short and intermediate term will be strong. I really do believe that when you just look at the conditions, they're very, very ripe for a strong market. And certainly the stimulus is like rocket fuel. There's just no question about that. So on the one hand, I do believe that. When you look out longer, at Ariel, we don't do macroeconomic prognostications. We try to think about just the long term of investment returns. And we, borrow many sayings from the great Warren Buffett, that it's a market of stocks, not a stock market. There's always going to be value in the market. And that's what we think about on a day-to-day basis.
Question, maybe a social question about minimum wage in this country. I know Starbucks has been talking about $15 across the country, but there's lots of companies that have been pushing back. What do you think ultimately happens?
I think the states and the municipalities have been deciding this issue. I think it's less about a federal decision at this point. When you look at the referendums that have occurred across the country is moving towards $15. I think it's very, very clear. But I've been more concerned about the living wage issue versus this, I think, unnuanced discussion about the minimum wage, because I think the living wage issue is really the one that really does attack the problem in this country. When you get to just a flat number, I think you lose the nuances that is so important. And I've said this publicly, $15 in San Francisco is different than $15 in Selma. We need to understand that difference.
And the other question is, how do you think that Starbucks should use its voice in the future? Under Howard Schultz, he would put the company front and center into big moral debates, as you know. And the question I would ask you is, whether you think that shifts or has changed under Kevin, and how you think it may shift or not under you as the chairwoman.
I am hoping we will continue to be bold and brave. Howard taught us well. He always talked about leading through the lens of humanity. That is in the DNA of the company. It is why I've loved Starbucks. It is why I've loved being in that room. And I cannot imagine we will shrink from that responsibility. And I mean it when I say responsibility. We have a responsibility to speak truth, our truth, and to speak to the issues that are very, very hard. Sometimes they're controversial. But I think at the end of the day, that has really allowed us to connect with the partners behind the counter inside of Starbucks, but also connect with the customer. And that has added shareholder value. So I believe in our past, and I think it'll be very much a part of our future.
And given your role now, and I know we've made a lot of it, but I think we should, and deservedly so, to say that you are the first black chairwoman of an S&P 500 company. When you look at what's happening, even over the past year, in terms of hiring, recruiting, bringing people both into the boardroom, but into top levels of management, how would you grade things? And if we were to have this conversation 2 or 3 years from now, what do you think it looks like?
Well, first of all, I'm not the first. I'm the only right now. Ursula Burns was the first when she headed up Xerox. I guess technically the first non-executive chair, because she was affiliated with the company at the time. But we're splitting hairs. Today, I'm the only one. And as I've said many times, math has no opinion. That's a sad statement about where we are as a society. Looking out and over the next few years, I would hope that we would see some meaningful change, because I think it's going to be very hard to be a publicly traded company in this country and not have diversity on your board. Now, there are a lot of companies that still are in that state, and there's a lot of work that has to be done. But I think the needle is moving in the right direction for the right reasons, which is the public is not going to have this. And the world is watching. And we all have to understand in the boardroom, corporate America, we have to understand how accountable we are to this society.
Okay, we're going to leave the conversation there. Congratulations again. We look forward to seeing you, hopefully in person, sooner or later. Now that more and more people are getting vaccinated, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.